If you are flying with the notorious budget airline Ryanair for the first time, be sure to watch this video because in it, I am going to be sharing everything you need to know in order to survive and outsmart this often pretty tricky airline. Now, in case you're new here, hi, I'm Christina from happytowander.com. And this channel is all about practical travel advice from someone who's been there, done that. So be sure to like and subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing. Now, let's start with the Ryanair booking process. First off, just to ease your mind, do know that Ryanair is completely fine to fly with, so long as you learn to play by their very strict rules. I always say this with any low-cost transport options, they definitely get you there and they definitely provide you the service that they promise. But at the end of the day, remember, they do actually have to make some money somehow. And in the case of Ryanair, that is simply by charging you for pretty much everything besides a spot on the plane and a tiny little bag to go with you. Checked luggage, food, water, seat choice, yes, and even any carry-on bags that are a little bit bigger than a backpack do come at an extra cost. And so be wary that those extra fees can really add up quite quickly. Some common ones that catch first-timers off guard include actually paying to choose your seat so that you're able to sit with the people that you booked your trip with. Otherwise, you are randomly allocated seats and they never keep you together. Paying to check in at the airport, this can cost between 30 to 55 euro. And paying for water or any kind of refreshment on board. So, in summary, if you're able to travel super light with just a personal item and you don't really care where you sit and you're fine to bring your own food and drink on board, then Ryanair is probably going to be the cheapest option that you'll find. Start adding on any extras though, and it could be a different story. All that said, if you do plan to travel with a carry-on bag, and not just a personal item, what I would really advise you do is compare flight prices, including the cost of a carry-on bag first before committing. Honestly, if you book early enough, a lot of the time you're going to find that the prices for Ryanair are actually pretty comparable to other mainstream airlines. Now, one trick that a lot of people don't actually know about is when you use a flight aggregator like Google Flights, for instance, what you can do is you can actually toggle on a filter that shows you prices based on having one carry-on bag included. And so that's going to get you a more accurate assessment of the price difference so that you can compare across different airlines, because otherwise, if you don't have that on, it's going to show you the cheapest possible price for Ryanair, which doesn't include a carry-on, just a personal item. And also, if you're covering a shorter distance, I would also consider the fact that buses or trains might actually be a valid option as well. That could end up being better value. Usually I use Omio to search and compare all the different options. Now, all those warnings aside, once you have decided that you do in fact want to go with Ryanair, I would advise that you book ahead directly when they release flights for the season, and also keep an eye on flash sales as well. Honestly, Ryanair flights aren't always super cheap these days, and so you should always aim to be strategic in finding deals even though it is a budget airline. One of the easiest ways is by signing up to their newsletter or following them on social media so that you get alerted when they have flash sales on. This can be a good strategy for more spontaneous trips that are a little bit closer to the date of travel. If you're planning ahead though, then the more reliable way to secure a deal might be to actually book as early as you possibly can. Because Ryanair uses dynamic pricing that is dependent on various factors, including demand, oftentimes the earlier you buy your ticket, the better the deal you're able to get. But the trouble is they typically release tickets in batches, so depending on when you're looking, you might actually find that flights for your desired dates aren't actually available yet. Annoyingly, this depends on the exact route, and so there's no official place to find out when these different drops are going to happen, apart from the very general rule of thumb that it's typically 6 to 9 months before. So yes, if you don't see any flights available yet, your best bet is really keeping a diligent eye on your desired routes. Unfortunately, I don't know of a better way to stay informed about potential ticket drops, but do let me know in the comments if you do. And make sure you're always booking directly with Ryanair rather than through a third party, because third-party bookings often require you to do an additional verification before your trip. Now, in regards to actually booking your flights though, I will say to beware because the cheapest flights often leave at very undesirable times, and to be honest with you, it's not always worth it. Now, Ryanair, they'll always tempt you with the whole 6 a.m. departure thing because the deal is so good, and you kind of start gaslighting yourself into believing that leaving at 6 a.m. is totally fine, because then when you get there, you get a full day in the destination. Now, maybe I'm just getting a bit old, but this is almost always not a good idea. A 6 a.m. flight realistically means you need to be at the airport by like 4 a.m., which means realistically you're probably going to be waking up at 3 a.m. if not earlier to get to the airport. So you're basically going to get no sleep, and you'll also be starting off your trip incredibly sleep deprived while also being unable to check into your accommodation most of the time for several hours, because check-in is usually after 12 p.m. So Remember not to get blinded by price, but also consider the logistics as well of any flight that you're going to be going for. Now next, if you're new to Ryanair, do also double check the location of your destination airport relative to the city center. Because sometimes budget airlines like Ryanair can fly into smaller airports that aren't very close to the actual city center at all. But first-timers might not realize this because they see the city name at the start of the airport name and they assume that must be the main airport or really close to the city, but that's not always the case. In some extreme cases, they might even be quite far, like over an hour drive, with less convenient public transport links as well, which ends up costing you extra and adding some unexpected expenses to your trip anyway. So yes, definitely look at the whole name of the airport, not just the city name at the start, and definitely put that name into your Google Maps to see where it is and what the connections are like to get into the city center. Granted, I do think this issue is getting a little bit better, probably because too many people were complaining, but in my very early days of flying with Ryanair, maybe like 10 years ago, they had some really atrociously named airports like Frankfurt Hahn Airport, which was a whole 2-hour bus ride from Frankfurt Central Station, and yes, I am still bitter about this. Another thing to be aware of is upsells all throughout the booking process, and also making sure that you're double checking none of those upsells are automatically selected. Because like other budget airlines, Ryanair is going to constantly be trying to upsell you throughout the entire booking process. Whether that's booking a pricier tier, adding bags, doing special seat selection, or adding any car insurance and rentals. So make sure you uncheck any of these add-ons unless you actually want them, because if you're not careful, you could easily end up just getting insurance or something that you didn't actually want. The other thing is to be sure to check prices elsewhere for things like hotels and car rentals before blindly adding them to your booking, because odds are you're probably going to find better deals elsewhere. Oh, and if you do end up paying for seat selection, do avoid the notorious seat 11A on the Boeing 737 planes, because as many people have shared on social media, this window seat is very special because it in fact comes with no window at all. These days, Ryanair has caught on to the fact that people are complaining, so they do warn you that there is no window, but back in the day, people would just book this and not realize, so be sure to keep an eye out. Now, when you're booking, there is a hack that you can use if you want to add a carry-on bag, but that's the only add-on that you want. So what you need to do is wait until later in the booking process to add your carry-on bag rather than pay the regular fare. So just FYI, the cheapest tier that you can book with Ryanair is known as the basic fare, and this means all you get is a personal item and that's pretty much it. So most people won't realistically travel this way. They'll want at least a 10-kilogram carry-on bag, and Ryanair knows this, which is why they try to force you into one of the more expensive fare classes right away when you're buying your ticket, so that you get the fare class with the carry-on, but you also opt into other benefits like seat selection and priority boarding. And they'll sell it to you like it's a really good deal. They'll be like, oh, for €36 more, you're getting all these benefits. But if you wait a little further along in the booking process, you can actually add that carry-on bag with priority boarding for cheaper. In this case, it was $11 cheaper. So yes, don't just opt into a higher fare class right away if all you want is an extra bag. There is the opportunity to do that later for a little bit cheaper. And before you confirm your booking, do double check, triple check even, that all the details like names, dates, etc. are correct. This is because trying to change anything with Ryanair after 48 hours can be hideously expensive, especially the name change fee, which goes up to €160 in person, which is honestly more than most Ryanair plane tickets. So yes, remember to double, triple check everything before you pay. It's going to make your life a lot easier. Finally, I would just say to download the Ryanair app so that you're able to easily check in and also get your boarding pass with ease. Again, they do charge extra for checking in and getting your boarding passes at the airport, so you really want to make sure that you do this in advance and don't wait until you get there. I find the Ryanair app is really good for this. All right, now it's time to move on to some Ryanair packing tips. First off, do make sure you are diligently reading the fine print to make sure you understand your limits. And don't just assume that your usual carry-on or your usual personal item bag will fit their restrictions just because they were fine for all your other airlines and other flights prior. And I personally wouldn't chance it with the dimensions just because Ryanair can be quite strict in enforcing their size policies. In fact, some of their sizes now even have built-in scales that weigh the bags at the same time as they're checking the size, so you honestly just never know. It's better safe than sorry because the overweight luggage fee is quite a lot. Now, on that note, usually the way that Ryanair checks if your bag is the right size is by seeing if it fits in something that is known as a baggage sizer, aka the bane of my existence. This is a box that is customized to the dimensions that they state are allowed on the plane. So if your bag fits comfortably inside the sizer within the dotted lines that they put down, then you're good to go. Honestly, I have been super lucky and I haven't actually been asked to size my bag many times in my history of flying with Ryanair, but it does happen. You see it on social media. And apparently Ryanair employees do actually earn a commission of €1.50 per bag for catching oversized bags. So just make sure that your bag will actually fit in the sizer, including the handle and the wheel. This is why I would personally prioritize soft-sided, dark-colored bags that can easily be squished. Now, the handy thing about soft-sided bags is so long as you don't stuff them super full, if you need to, you can actually bend them, squish them into the sizer, which can't be said for the hard shell cases. I would also recommend getting something in a dark color just because, black is slimming, and so these bags are going to look smaller, and oftentimes what they're really looking for is they do a quick glance just to see if your bag looks like it's oversized, and that's when they're going to ask you to size it. So just make it look as small as possible and you'll be golden. And also, if you want to be really hardcore, you can look into special bags that have certain things like detachable wheels that can help you save a bit of space. Now, in terms of packing strategy though, do pack your heaviest stuff in your personal item, aka the bag that's going to be going under the seat. Now, one of the few places where Ryanair is actually kind of generous compared to other airlines is that there's no weight limit, as of now, on the personal item. This is honestly really refreshing because even some of the mainstream legacy carriers are now starting to implement a weight limit that includes both your carry-on and your personal item weighed together, which is honestly incredibly annoying and restrictive. So the good thing is Ryanair doesn't do that. So if you have anything that's heavier, do put it in your small underseat bag because that's not going to count towards any weight allowance. I would also recommend use compression packing cubes to keep your stuff all organized and also really grabbable in case of a sizer emergency. Now, I personally love packing cubes because they keep everything really organized, but the compression ones in particular are really great for condensing your stuff, so it takes up less space. And so this is really great for light packing situations, like when you're trying to pack for Ryanair and trying to cram everything into a small bag. The other cool thing about having everything in a packing cube is if, in worst case scenario, you put your bag in the sizer and it doesn't fit, then what you're able to do is actually just take that whole cube out and then you can just conceal that packing cube somewhere. Like I always wear a massive jacket with huge pockets whenever I'm flying with a budget airline, because in the case that I have to take something out, I can just easily slide the packing cube into my pocket, slide my headphones in, anything like that. Another trick for making some extra space is to take advantage of the duty-free bag loophole to bring more stuff with you. In case you didn't know this, Ryanair does explicitly state on their website that your duty-free bag containing duty-free items is permitted in the cabin along with your cabin bags. Of course, use this tip within reason. As they state, this bag should be containing duty-free items, so don't try to sneak things in there that are clearly things that you didn't get at duty-free, so things like clothes and stuff like that. Instead, stick with smaller items that maybe you can put at the bottom of the duty-free bag to kind of conceal it with other things you bought, or maybe just bring things like snacks and toiletries that could plausibly be from the duty-free. And then you have a whole other bag. Now, finally, let's move on to some Ryanair tips for the day of your trip. First off, if you are opting for random seat allocation, do make sure you wait a while to check in online for your flight. In other words, don't be checking in right away. And that is because oftentimes what they'll do is they'll actually assign the undesirable seats first. So like the middle seats in the back of the plane, for instance, are the first ones to get assigned because they want people to be like, I don't want to sit there, I'm gonna sit somewhere else. And so that makes sense, right? Because someone who's automatically assigned a window or aisle is less likely to upgrade themselves. So the longer you wait to check in, the more likely it is that Ryanair will run out of these undesirable seats. And that leaves you with a higher chance of scoring a desirable seat like a window or aisle or something that's closer to the front of the plane. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but actually a lot of people have tested this theory and documented their findings on social media, and pretty much every single video I've seen, it's worked. So clearly there is some merit to this theory. Just whatever you do, do not forget to check in before the cutoff time online, which is usually 2 hours before departure. And you really want to make sure you don't miss this cutoff because otherwise you're gonna have to check in at the airport and incur that infamous airport check-in fee. Now, another thing I would advise is getting to the airport early so that there is time for extra checks if it's needed. If you have a Canadian passport like me or a passport from any of these countries, then typically what you need to do before your trip is actually verify your passport in advance of your flight. Now, back in the day, you actually had to do this in person, which was incredibly annoying for me because I travel carry-on only. I never needed to check bags, but then I would have to wait in the exact same check-in line as everyone else. But on more recent flights that I've been on with Ryanair, I've actually been able to verify everything with my passport through the app. So maybe that's going to become more common practice now. But in any case, I have had many situations where I've gotten to the airport and had to go to the Ryanair staff to do extra checks. So you really want to make sure you get to the airport early to accommodate for that just in case. I would also really recommend you eat before your flight or potentially pack your own snacks to enjoy on board. One thing you should know is that food and drink are never included on a Ryanair flight, and the options do leave quite a lot to be desired most of the time, despite the photos looking pretty good. Just don't get catfished like I did with this pasta. You should also make sure you pack a really solid pair of noise-canceling headphones to help block out the noise and distractions throughout your flight. Ryanair flights can be very noisy, and so for shorter flights, it honestly feels like someone is making an announcement the entire time, because not only do they do the safety demos, but then they're going to start announcing when they're going to go around with the food and drinks for purchase, and then they're going to come around with the duty-free purchases and tell you about all the things that are on special that you can buy on board. Then, not even joking, they'll start to sell scratch cards, and sometimes they'll come around for charity donations before the end of the flight. So honestly, sometimes when the flights are an hour and a half, they are genuinely announcing things the entire flight. So make sure you get those noise canceling headphones. You are going to really thank yourself for that. I would also advise you download some entertainment for yourself for offline use so that you're not bored the entire time, because no surprise, Ryanair flights are quite bare bones in that there are no TV screens and there's not even like a seat pocket either. So make sure you have your own entertainment loaded for the flight. Now, when it comes time to board, another thing I would really advise is you should line up as soon as you can, because there is limited space for bags. So make sure you line up to board as soon as you can. Usually you'll see the queue forming anyway. Finally, this isn't exactly a revolutionary hack, but it really does pay to just smile and be nice to Ryanair staff to avoid them potentially pulling you out of the line to size your bag or be difficult with you. Because at the end of the day, right, Ryanair employees are just people. And so if you're nice to them and you smile, this can reduce the odds of them being jerks and forcing you to weigh and size your bag. Granted, this isn't a foolproof hack, but I mean, it couldn't hurt. All right, if you have any Ryanair experiences, please share them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.